Our afternoon speaker, Dr. Atkinson. Dr. Atkinson is an associate professor in the Department of Psychology at the University of Western Ontario, and he's also an educational consultant. Most important to me, he is a maritimer. Thank you. He has won numerous teaching awards at the university and the national level. Many of you already know that. He has presented over 200 presentations and talks in the area of teaching and learning. I guess this will be 201. He's a dynamic speaker, he's an insightful speaker, and he does combine his two areas of expertise, which is psychology and education. And we all know how important psychology is when we're doing clinical placements with our students. Previously, Dr. Atkinson has provided insight into the millennial generation and dealing with the difficult student, and I think he will make some comments on some of that material again today. This afternoon, Dr. Atkinson will be providing us with his insights into how we might better deal with conflict in a clinical education setting. The receptor-student relationship is a unique one with potential for respect, friendship, and unfortunately, sometimes also conflict. I know that Dr. Atkinson will be able to assist us this afternoon with this troublesome area of conflict within the clinical education environment. Please welcome Dr. Atkinson.
Thanks very much. We're going to try to have a look at conflict in a variety of settings. And one thing I want to do to get us started here is to just have a feeling for what the advice used to be on how to deal with conflict. So I've got a very classic video here. Hopefully it won't feedback too much. Very classic video here, and we'll have a look at that and see. As you look at this, you'll recognize some conflict management strategies that I know you see.
behaviors have changed in class in terms of what's going on, but the management styles
haven't changed a whole lot. And we're going to recognize that management style as it comes up again as we go through today's talk. What I want to do today is talk about dealing with conflict. I want to talk about what causes it, the sort of background setting conditions. We're going to have a look at various styles of conflict management. And I should note I've drawn on the PEP website here, so if you haven't been there already, please go and have a look at it. And I know you'll be looking at some of that this afternoon. I want to spend some time talking about generational differences. I talked about this last time I was here, so I'm just going to give you a flavor again for what that is. And then I want us to problem solve it, because I actually think a lot of the conflict stems from this. And then hopefully we'll have some advice on what to do. But the first thing that we want to do is to try to see if we can see some conflict in a more recent situation. So I want you to have a look at this particular video, and then tell me what you actually think is going on in this situation, and where the conflict is actually lying. So let's check this one out. Different expectations. So the supervisor thinks one thing should be going on, and the intern thinks maybe something else. Okay, what else? How about people from this side? Any other issues here?
Well, that intern really wants to get off of you. She has a personal thing that she's also feeling pressure from on the other side besides her placement or whatever it is.
Okay, so she's getting pressured from mom or grandmother or whomever. And would it be fair to say that she sees the pressure from the family side as equivalent to the... Yeah.
Well, maybe even more, because the family's going to be around no matter how long her placement lasts.
Yeah, heck with the job. happening there? Think about the conflict management style that the supervisor did. How did she deal with it?
Well, there's no room for discussion. This has to be done, and that's what we do.
Chop, chop. No, I mean, basically.
It is chop, chop.
Okay. Kind of like the teacher in the math example, right? It's like, listen, I don't care what you have. I don't care what kind of conflict you have at home. I don't even care what kind of pressure you have. This is the job. You got to do it. End of story. Quick question for you. We don't have to answer it right now, but just think about it. Is that an effective way to do it? Maybe. Maybe not. Let's have a look at we'll get to maybe what we could do instead, but let's think about what conflict is. Conflict is a clash or struggle. I'm just going to read this to you. Clash or struggle when a real or perceived threat or difference exists in the desires, thoughts, attitudes, feelings, or behaviors of two or more parties. I read it fast like that because this is sort of how we define conformity and pressure and compliance in social psychology. And the way it's written, it basically says, anytime two different people have differences on almost anything imaginable, you got conflict. And that's pretty well what Cox is telling you here. There's going to be a struggle as soon as somebody sees a threat. The threat, by the way, is perceived freedom to what I can do. And so if you're telling me I can't go to my grandmother's party just because you think I have to do paperwork or whatever it is, that's a threat. Now we can argue about what's more important, but that's probably what's happening in this situation. Conflict is inevitable. There's no way that we can get rid of conflict. Conflict is a part of life. If you're living and breathing, you're going to get conflict. In a way, that's sort of saying it's reality. You got to deal with it. You can't get around it. It's always going to happen. Note that conflict can be of two kinds. You could actually have a functional type of conflict. A conflict where somebody experiences struggle trying to deal with how they're going to handle various situations, and from that you're going to get a whole lot of personal growth. It could be like that, but no, it doesn't happen like that very often. Most conflict is dysfunctional rather than functional. The kind of functionality that conflict has is mostly when I'm talking about individual personality development. If I've got conflict on the job, or if I've got conflict in a work situation with somebody else, there's very few times that that's going to be functional. One of us is going to be growing from it maybe, but not both. So typically it's dysfunctional, and we have to figure out how to deal with it. What causes it? Here's a number of causes. Some of these are not specific to the sort of supervisor-intern kind of situation. Poor communication. Okay, so I don't tell you what I really want you to do, and you don't tell me what you really want to do. That can cause a great deal of trouble. Strangely enough, just disruption in routine. What I'm used to doing can cause conflict, especially if I'm a supervisor. What I'm used to doing may not be what you're used to doing, and I'm trying to tell you to do it my way. And I'm going to say why. I mean, this is going to be a bit of a source of trouble, I know that. Unclear goals. We don't understand what we're doing here. If I don't understand and share in your goal, and you might think that there's kind of an assumption that I'll just buy right in, but I'm not necessarily going to do that, then we got problems. Sometimes you'll see there's a quest for power. Conflict can be driven not only from the student's perspective, but from the supervisor's perspective. I don't know about you guys, but I know a lot of supervisors who are real power trippers, and they will put people in their place no matter what, even if they're doing the right thing. Part of the second one, too, it's an ego thing. And that can cause conflict because you're feeding something other than the relationship. Different value systems, that's going to come out in some of the generational differences, but it might be a lot of conflict is generated cross-culturally as well, because what I think is appropriate in this particular situation, you might not. And that can cause a great deal of difficulty. Here's some specific ones that are on the PP site, specific to situations of preceptors and interns. Unclear roles and expectations, already mentioned that, absolutely. I was going to suggest, by the way, that the very first thing you got to do is make those roles and expectations crystal clear, because that'll help. Inadequate skills or knowledge. It might be the case that I'm on a job placement, and God forbid, I really don't know what I'm doing. And if I don't know what I'm doing, you can bet I'm not going to admit it to the preceptor, right? Because if I do, I'm out of there instantly. So that's going to cause some, it's an issue that you have to deal with. I'm not sure exactly the best way, but it's a problem. Personality differences, these happen all the time, not just in job things, but anytime you get a high power, low power situation, that's going to get in there. Anxiety. Remember that intern is in there. The rest of their life depends upon that preceptor's rating. It's a very high anxiety situation. Preceptor also might be overworked, overstressed. This is a problem because I don't have time to explain all of these things that I assume that you should know, and that's going to be an issue. If the team itself is completely non-receptive, that's going to be a really big problem, and it's kind of beyond the interpersonal interaction. But you've got to deal with that as well, and that might be in there. Different learning and working styles. We talk about this all the time. People have different learning styles, right? There might be a visual learner, an auditory, all of that stuff. Well, guess what? Different teaching styles too. And sometimes teachers or supervisors have one style and it doesn't mesh. And we often forget that just because I'm teaching doesn't necessarily mean that you're paying attention to what I'm giving you. And maybe I need to think about that. And I'm going to suggest strongly that there are generational differences. We'll look at that explicitly in just a second. But that might get in there. Because remember, the workforce coming through now is the millennial generation. And if you're wondering how many people I'm talking about there for workforce entry, that worldwide estimate is 75 million are coming on the job market now. What happens as a result of that? Well, one thing that might happen, and this is kind of a minor thing in a way, when people find themselves in pressure situations where there is conflict and they have to go along with it, you're going to get something I call compliance. You're going to go along with it. It's the whatever kind of thing. I'll do whatever you want, sure, fine. Kind of patch over the problem. I haven't changed my attitude one iota. I don't believe a word of what's going on. I'm just doing it to stop what's happening right now. You're going to get compliance. If you want real attitude change, you've got to do something else. You might get discourteous behavior, rude behavior. Selfishness can kick in there where people are doing stuff for their own, and that may be a bit of an issue. Defensive language. We didn't see much of that in that particular clip that I just had a look at. But you can sort of see at the very end, the whatever. Yeah, whatever. That's a bit defensive and it's a bit hostile as well. Lack of respect. Thus we think that that's just the intern respecting the supervisor. You can flip that around just as easily. And that might be in there as well. You're going to get increased stress, and in the worst possible case, overt hostility. I've actually seen cases where supervisor and student, fortunately not in a clinical setting that you guys might be in, hit each other. You don't want that kind of stuff going on, but it will happen. We've got to deal with it differently. We can't just do that because it's not going to settle anything if you handle conflict in that way. So let's have a look at a different scenario now. What I want you to focus on is, and strangely enough, the problem's the same. The student does the same issue, or doesn't do the same thing, but the supervisor has a completely different way of dealing with it. So let's check that out and see if we can figure out what worked a little bit better this time around.
Hi Nancy, how are you? Hey Michelle, good, how are you? I'm fine. Do you have a minute? I want to talk to you about a few things. Yeah, I do. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. I just wanted to let you know that I'm really enjoying being your preceptor, and the staff here are really enjoying working with you, and your assessment skills are really excellent. One small thing I have noticed though is that you're not always documenting after your client interactions.
Okay. I always do the documentation. I don't usually do it right after because I find that sometimes it gets in the way of all the work that I have to do throughout the day.
I know, and I can understand that. What's really important though is that if you need to document after each client, if you leave the documentation and then you see another client, and then you go to document, you may forget what you did with one client or mix up the information, and that can lead to errors, and that is a concern.
Okay, no, I definitely see your point, and I will keep it in mind for the next time.
Okay. Well, let's think though, what could you do in your day to maybe build in more time for documentation?
Thinking about building in more time, I think is actually a great step. I think I'm gonna definitely have to schedule more time in between my clients, just so that when I finish with one, I will be able to work on the documentation right away, instead of having to worry about the next client coming in so quickly. I want to definitely get here earlier so that I can be more organized in the morning. And as well as speaking of organization, I think I'm going to get myself one of those organizers so that I can keep track of all the things I have to do.
Okay, that sounds great. Sounds like you're on the right track.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. There's one thing I wanted to ask you actually, was would I be able to get off a little bit early today just because I have my grandmother's 75th surprise birthday party tonight. And I know my mom and my aunts wanted me to help set up. So I was just wondering if that would be all right with you.
Okay, have you documented on the 2 clients you've seen this morning?
Well, not exactly. I still have to do that. And I have to see 2 clients this afternoon as well.
Okay, that's quite a bit. So do you think you're going to be able to get all of the work done and the documentation done before you leave early?
By tonight? That's going to be a little bit tough, I think.
Okay. Well, let's see. Maybe what I could do is I have a meeting this afternoon, and I could probably leave early, and I'll see your last client, and then hopefully will that give you enough time to get your documentation done on your first 3?
Yeah, that would definitely help me out. That's really nice of you. Are you sure though?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. But next week things are going to be different, right?
Okay, I promise. Next week I'll definitely be on the ball.
Okay, not a problem. All right, we'll have fun at your grandmother's birthday party.
Okay, thank you.
Wow. The thing that happened in that particular case was dramatically different than in the first case. What changed? What did the supervisor do differently? Because again, let me remind you that the student's problem was identical. Yeah.
She started with positive feedback.
She started with positive feedback. So before anything else came up, before it was, what do you mean you haven't documented this stuff? It was, you're doing a good job. Okay, that's going to start things off real fast. Yeah.
Sorry, she explained her reasons for her expectations.
Ah, she made it very clear in a non-threatening way, rather than the, you should do this kind of thing. It's that this is important for the following reason. And that helps us understand what's going on. Anything else you noticed? Yeah.
Even just how she started the conversation, she said, how are you doing today? She didn't just say, I need to talk to you.
Yeah.
She opened it up to a friendly conversation right at the beginning.
Isn't that interesting? Because when your supervisor comes in and says, I need to talk to you, you know what they need to talk to you, right? I mean, this is not an issue, but if it's, how you doing today? When it's a friendly start, we get into it a whole lot better. That really sets the stage for what else is going on. What else did you notice about that interaction? Yeah.
She valued the student's personal event that was happening. When it was my grandmother's 75th birthday, she said, oh, wow.
Yeah. She actually valued that. It wasn't that this is something out here that, like, I'm sorry, you can do this any day. It made a very big importance, and it's very important to the student, obviously. She values that. Do you notice anything else? Yeah.
Just to comment on that point, though, because yes, I think we could value that. The only problem I'm having with this scenario is that the student's telling me about it in the middle of the day that it's happening, when it's like, you knew this was happening yesterday.
Yeah, last year or whatever.
Or, so there could have been something else.
Okay.
Discussion of this long before.
Or you're in
Sure.
this situation.
So the point is that there could have been discussion about this long before, because presumably the student knew about this sometime before, 2 hours before the event. Supervisor can probably take care of that, right, by pointing out that, it would really help me, by the way. I always like doing that. I don't know, for those of you who do the supervising thing, whenever something like this happens, I always put it on myself. It's not like you're messing up. It's like, it would really help me. please. It would really help me if you carried on and did this kind of thing, because I find that a more effective strategy myself. So yes, she does. Yes, she could have done that too. And I bet that if she brought that up again, it would be simple to take care of. Yeah.
It's sort of a make or break moment. Like that, it's very important that, and I mean, when I hear a lot of how people have all these pressures outside of work too, and a supervisor can completely throw it in that. And I'm in weddings, by disciplining that, like the timing of discipline has to be there. So you have to, because you just,
Absolutely.
like, how do you want to get your wedding and know that you were just disciplined today?
Yeah, comment is, people come with a lot of things, a lot of pressures that they have to deal with, such as going to your wedding, going to a variety of events, and they feel very bad about doing this. I swear to God, this is true. I had a student who was scheduled to write the final exam, and a week before, she actually came in to see me and said that she didn't think she could write the exam, and I asked her why. She was scheduled for brain surgery. And she said that she would try to do it the day before, and because it really meant a lot to her. I said, no, don't do it. She said, well, I really feel I have to. And so they feel so pressured that this has to be done, that you skip your wedding, you skip the brain surgery, you don't do the exam, for God's sake, right? I think that that's a very important point. We've got to deal with that. One more, yeah.
I think a big difference between those two scenarios is that the first one, the preceptor was acting out of anger and using that, from our discussion this morning, using her amygdala as her basis for her reaction. In the other scenario, she had clearly put some thought into what she was going to say to the student before approaching the student, and thought to herself, okay, I want to start this off in a positive light, and she clearly put some thought into it.
So instead of emotionally reacting and using the amygdala, she probably used her frontal lobe a little more, right? So it kicked in, and it makes a huge difference. And you might have known, of course, the whole scenario is set up that way, but the whole tone of the conversation is completely different than it was the first time around. You can handle situations very differently, and conflict management experts will tell you that these are classic examples of how to do things. I've seen everything from 4 different styles to 10 different styles, but I really think I'm going to show you the 5, and I think these are all on the PEP website as well, that seem to be consistent across all of the stuff that I've looked at. One style is the force or power style, and yes?
What is the PEP website?
What is the PEP website?
I never heard it called the PEP website.
Excuse me. How come you haven't been able to pay attention to this? This was part of your reading assignment. You should have known better. What do we usually call that, by the way? PAP? Okay.
No, I just thought it was the preceptor website.
It is the preceptor website. Okay. Thank you. You're welcome. All right. The preceptor education program. On there you will find a number of sources. You'll find those videos too, by the way. Force or power is what we saw used in the first scenario. It's also the same kind of thing that was used by the math teacher at the beginning. This is where a high authority simply imposes the solution. We're going to solve the conflict like this. I have power. If you don't like it, go home. And as a result, there's a winner. You do it my way, or it's the highway, and a loser. This kind of situation is not the best way to sort of conflict. I've got a note here that this is useful in extremely heavy-duty situations and emergencies. You're not going to sit around and talk about how to do the treatment here. High powers and step in and say, we're doing it this way. Absolutely understood. Everything else, though, this kind of situation, if you use that force thing, is going to result in hostility. It's also going to result in compliance. It's the whatever response, we'll do it your way, but I couldn't care less. This thing can work in extreme situations, but otherwise, it's not a good way to resolve conflict. Avoidance. In this particular, or denial, I've seen it called as well. One party simply walks away. There's no conflict, I'm just ignoring it. I'm not going to deal with it right now. I might even refuse to acknowledge that it exists. I don't care about it because I don't have time to deal with it. Avoidance actually can be useful if you're in a very high emotional situation. If emotions are running high, best thing you can do is walk out. Come back later, deal with it differently. That's the only time that this is useful. If it's trivial, I'd say don't bother getting a conflict going for something silly. But the problem with this particular kind of strategy is that the conflict is never resolved because you've avoided it or failed to acknowledge it. Third one is compromise, also called negotiation. In this particular kind of thing, you can actually have a sort of a win-win situation, but what happens is both sides give in to something. Both sides end up saying, okay, you do this and I'll do that. And we see what might go on in that particular situation. If both sides are willing to do that, you can result in a quick solution. I can solve the conflict now because, I've done one thing, you do another, that's okay. But it may not give you the best solution. If we think about the two scenarios we looked at, if I say, okay, it's all right for you not to do the documentation today, it still has to be done sometime. You still got to do it. And so I can negotiate that part away, but I can't get rid of the problem. And one other issue that often happens in this is if I know that you're going to do this, if I know that you're a compromiser, I'm going to inflate my demands like all get out. Right? Because I'm going to ask for the moon and the sky because I know you'll come down and give me some of that stuff. So parties take extreme positions. They both give something, and it kind of leaves some stuff because it doesn't work that way. Fourth one, accommodation. Here's where one side simply gives in to maintain a positive relationship. We're having a conflicting situation. I know that you're wrong, but I can't stand the fact that we're fighting all the time. Sounds like a marriage thing, doesn't it? and so one side gives in simply to stop the fighting. Well, okay, that obviously ends the conflict, and it takes care of it that way. But I'm going to say, never use this for serious problems. Because, if I give in to a serious problem, the problem's, if I say, well, it's all right, you don't have to document, we don't need that documentation. I'm going to get in a lot of trouble, you're going to get in a lot of trouble, and the whole thing's going to go to, heck. The only time that accommodation is useful, I think, is when you use it as a first step. So we're going to talk about this, perhaps like we saw in the second scenario there. We're going to talk about this. I'm going to do this now, but now we can go on and talk about it in a more detailed way later on. Never do it for serious problems. It's probably okay as a first step in what you really should be doing, which is a collaboration kind of situation. And here, both sides recognize the abilities, the skills, and the interests of the other. I understand what's going on. I really know the whole thing here. The parties will then try to explore and modify their views along the way. Of course, that takes a lot of time, but it gives you the absolute best solution. It maximizes the outcome. Great problem-solving, conflict management strategy. If you have years to do it, it will work. This is the kind of thing I try to do in all international conflicts, but of course, it takes a long time to get that done. It really is good, but it may take way too long. If we look at those styles of conflict management, and I said to you, what's the ideal way to do it? You, of course, would say collaboration. And again, this is ideal from any number of perspectives. Collaboration is probably the ideal one. Compromise, I'll put that in there a little bit as not quite as good, but at least it's stepping us up in one way or another shape or form. What do preceptors and interns actually use? What do you think? I'll give you a hint. It is not collaboration. You know what they do? Avoidance is number one. Number two is force. And I think then one of the others probably follows in at the end. It's the kind of thing that this stuff's going on. I don't have time to deal with this. You got to do it. And I'm going to avoid it until I can't avoid it any longer. And then I'm going to tell you to do it. So it's a time-based thing. But, I just want you to think about what might be the best way to reduce the conflict rather than purely the most efficient way. And Avoidance is certainly the most efficient, not the best. Now, I do believe strongly that there are generational differences that cause a lot of this stuff. And I've talked about the millennials before, but I've got another thing that I think might capture this for you. So I'm going to show you one more video. And as you watch this, it's going to be about students in a classroom, sort of. But think about what's going on here. Think about how students come through the system here and what this means on the other side, particularly maybe by the time they get to the stage where they're going to do an internship. This is a YouTube video. Some of you may have seen this. It's a very interesting one. So let's check it out. flavor for the ideas about what might be going on with today's students. And I know I've talked about this before in terms of looking at what the students of today are like. So let me just remind you a little bit, and I've got a little new information in here too. When we look at that millennial in a generation, there's certainly people born after 1982. They're still calling them millennials right now. 100 million people, that's a huge cohort. It's at least a third bigger than the baby boomers that we thought was the biggest cohort ever. Ethnically diverse, roughly 40% identify themselves as visible minorities, which is way up from any other generation we might have ever looked at. They are a double income family, typically, and this is in North America, Western society. They're very cherished, the millennial children. You'll often see that baby on board sign all over the place. Mom and Dad really care about them. And they care about them for a number of reasons, but they think that they're special. They're used to a lot, they expect a lot. Whenever there's been problems before, Mom and Dad have stepped in, they've done some stuff for them. They've had extra schooling, soccer practice, all of that stuff. And they've all taken care of everything. They've certainly are driven by fun and high energy, but it really is still an era of increased community. They have their own extended community of friends. They also are very much into the local community and will do volunteer work as well. So it's a very community-oriented, team-oriented kind of situation. The reason that Mom and Dad cherish them is this right here. If you look at the important events in most millennials' lives, they'll tell you that their lives are punctuated by what the news presents, and what the news presents is absolute huge disasters. We blow up buildings with terrorist attacks. We have huge hurricanes, earthquakes, all of that stuff, shootings on schools. These are the things that are both on their minds and Mom and Dad's minds, so they try to protect them as much as they possibly can. Millennials are special as far as Mom and Dad are concerned. They are sheltered. They're protected against all of that stuff. And I think I've mentioned this before too. They're protected against everybody, including me. Don't tell me what to do, just send money. The Essential Parenting Guide to college years. This will get you through in terms of what you need to know about what's going on in school. They are very confident. They're team-oriented, high-achieving. They're incredibly high-achieving. You ask a first-year student what they expect to get in my course when they come in. The answer is 90. It's amazing. They expect to breeze through everything and do incredibly well. They're very pressured and they're very conventional. We, of course, think that they are doing this because they know they got to get out there and get some work. But this might give you a little bit of feeling. Have you ever felt that an intern is a little bit different, that maybe they don't have the same kind of dedication that you used to? Average number of temporary jobs before you got your final job that you settled on. For the boomers, that number is 0 to 1. Many times, whatever you started in as your first job was the job that you stayed on. For today's kids, what is the average number of jobs before they get a permanent job? It's 11. And it's not because they're moving around, it's because they're on contract, or on short-term this, or on that. People don't have a lot of dedication to the company because the company doesn't have a lot of dedication to them. And that's in higher education as well. You can't walk out of grad school and become a prof anymore. You got to spend the time doing postdoc 1, postdoc 2, this, that, and the other thing. It takes time. Technology is very important. Here's some stats that we can have a quick look at. 94%, and note that this is data from 2002, so these are even up to date now. 94% use the web for school, 70% use instant messaging, and 81% use email. Roughly 60% don't use the telephone anymore, or if they do use a phone, it's a VoIP system. 84% of university students have their own computer. And that number goes up all the time. I noticed in my class just this last year that almost every single student in class has a laptop. Note that notebooks are replacing desktops. Go try to buy a desktop sometime. You can't hardly find them anywhere anymore. It's very difficult. And 67% will tell you that they get their valid information from the web, which is a little bit troubling. Number one source, by the way, if you ask a student to write a paper, the number one source that they turn to, take a guess? Wikipedia. Wikipedia, absolutely. And I have to spend weeks and weeks and weeks telling them why Wikipedia isn't a good source. one way to understand this completely is to look at what I'm going to call the information age mindset. And this kind of can get you in the feeling for what it's like to be a millennial student. First of all, computers are not technology. In the same way that you think of television, okay, we don't sit around and look at television and think, wow, what a marvelous piece of technology. Oh, it's a screen. I wonder how those airwaves, how do those waves get? No, we don't care anymore. Or how does it come through the cable? I don't know. Computers are the same thing. They are appliances that we carry around with us all the time. The internet is much better than TV. You'll notice even in that clip, students spend about a fourth of the time watching television as compared to being on the web. And of course you get TV on the web, I know you can stream everything, but they don't watch TV much anymore. Reality is no longer real. What's real is what's on the web. I turn to the web, I look at the web, I see that as real. And I take valid information from there as well. Information literacy is something that's really important in a lot of university settings, and we need to think about that. Doing is more important than knowing. The half-life of information these days is vanishingly small. In some disciplines, things are turned over every day. In some disciplines, web journals update publications every single day. So don't tell me I have to sit around and know something. It's much more important that I know how to do it and get the information rather than the content itself. Learning resembles Nintendo more than logic. Any gamers out there? No? Couple, maybe? If you're learning a game, you don't sit around and read the instructions. What you do is you boot it up and you start playing, and you fall and you fail a number of times. That's how you learn to do things. If I open up my iPhone, I don't sit around reading the instructions on how to use it. I turn it on and deal with it. So this idea that somehow there's a logical sequence of things is gone. Just do it, and we figure it out from there. Multitasking is a way of life. As the clip suggested, you've got to be a multitasker. Some people are better than others. Most students of today are incredibly good multitaskers. Yes, they can use their computer, use their cell phone, Facebook, and read at the same time. Now, is it the most efficient? I don't know, but they can do it. Typing is preferred to hand. Anybody write anymore? Yeah, you do still? It's a vanishing thing, you know? It's most people, if you want to really believe this, next time you have to send a memo, grab a yellow pad or whatever, and try to write it. You'll be so frustrated that you'll throw the thing away because we're so used to typing. Staying connected is essential. I got all my friends out there. I've got to check the Facebook stuff. I need to do that. Everything important in my life is actually coordinated by Facebook. And so I need to be online all the time. And if you have a smartphone or an iPhone, you can have it in the palm of your hand now easily. No problem. Zero tolerance for delay. I don't want to wait for anything. Certainly, anybody got dial-up anymore? Dial-up's going to disappear pretty soon. Even in, well, it's also, that digital TV's coming in a year and a half. It'll be all digital, which means that I think the dial-up will disappear too. So, no delays. Consumer and creator are blurred. We don't know what's on the web because I don't know who created it. Hey, I downloaded the clips off of your website. It was simple. They're mine now. Not really. But it's so easy to do that. And if you didn't know that they were clips off your website, you'd think, wow, you went ahead and made all these things. It's amazing to do that. The students are different in many ways, and I want us to spend a few minutes thinking about that. We don't have a whole lot of time, but I want you to brainstorm about how this causes conflict in the intern preceptor situation. And so I'm only going to give you 5 minutes to do this. But what we're going to do is this row right here, all the way back. Put yourself in the role of the preceptors. You tell me what kind of conflicts are generated by intergenerational differences. But you're a preceptor. On this side, you're the interns. What kind of conflict is generated by intergenerational differences from your perspective. In the middle, you have the hardest task of all. I want you to come up with solutions. And you're going to have to do it before you know these because they're doing them now. But think about what you can do. However, as they present their stuff, you can come up, bootstrap, we can keep talking. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do this. And then we're going to have a look. Can somebody share just one problem with me? Yes?
We talked about time.
Time?
How you look at time.
Okay.
Have urgent things, for example, as opposed to we think you need to.
Okay, so you're saying from, there's a certain thing that you have to earn stuff. That I just can't waltz in here and start making 80 grand a year. Which, by the way, is the number that comes out if I ask students what they expect to make in the first job. I know all of you will worry about that. So you've got to put in the time. Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
So there's an informality about students. They come in right away and they're kind of buddies with you. They're not, or they want to be your colleague right away.
Yeah.
There's not that same level. We were discussing Internists because even seniors this day, they don't get called by Mr. and Mrs. They get called by their first names. And but there's that definite. The lines are a little bit more blurred or muddy between the supervisor.
So the lines are blurred, and I'm sure you guys find that problematic.
I don't know if it is problematic, but it could be, because sometimes you feel like maybe I didn't set up enough differential at the beginning so that they know that there's a bit more, somebody's in charge kind of thing. And so everything, and I don't know if it's because also when we have kids, we spend a lot of time explaining our reasons why things are expected. So then sometimes when we want them to just do something, you can't say, just do it because you know?
So
they want a reason for everything, right?
The lines of power are blurred, and I'm hearing, the lines of respect, so instead of calling me Dr. Atkinson, they're going to walk in and call me Mike, and then, and that's a little odd, isn't it? Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to add you on their Facebook?
Want to add you on their Facebook? Are you not on Facebook? Oh, my. Oh, okay. So, yeah, you want to get on Facebook.
Your internet, I guess, your face on Facebook is shown to everybody. And is that a representative of your profession? And
Okay, so if I'm an intern and I put my, a goofy party picture of me up on Facebook, you don't want that.
Well, yeah, I don't want a parent to come to me later and say,
Say,
yeah, I saw that.
who is this jerk?
They didn't have very many clothes on.
They're dancing on the bar in a semi-clad state. Okay, so there's an issue of, let's call that professionalism. And it's professionalism not necessarily on the job, but bleeding into other aspects of life. Okay, I'm going to run over and find out from the students now. These people don't want you on Facebook. They don't want you bothering them on Facebook. They want you to address them by their proper title and respect them. And I'm sorry, you can't have everything right away. So, what do you see as the issues from your side?
Why can't I?
Why can't I?
My mother has let me do that.
Okay, Mom and Dad have always allowed me to get everything I need right away. So what's wrong with you guys? Okay, so there's a little bit of an issue of, I've been used to this all along. What's changed now? Okay, what else?
I'm a lot better mom. I have a lot of things I have to do.
You have a lot of things you have to do. I'm a busy person. I'm sorry, internship's over at 4 o'clock, I'm gone. And I don't really give a crap if my notes aren't done, because I gotta go down and party. Oh, it's important to me. my friend from Seattle's coming in, and we're going to do this kind of thing, and I can pick it up later. It's all right.
Yeah, like, no, they don't want any rules. Well, I don't want any rules.
You don't want any rules?
Give me the power, I'll do it in my own time, I'll work from home, tell me what I have to do, I'll get it done, maybe they'll like, but I want to do it online.
So don't tell me I got to get this documentation done before I leave. Okay, why can't I do it at home? Why can't I do it by computer? Right? Because we still have to do it by, what's that, with pen? Don't you guys have computer documentation yet? No. You're right, it's hard. What else? Anything else from the student side?
Taking all the fun out of it with all these rules.
Work should be fun. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Work should be fun. Whoever said that work couldn't be fun? Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
We talked about the rigidity in the sense of the students might have a better idea, but the supervisor wants to stay in their way of learning.
So that you're a young, with a hip person, you know how to do things, you got an idea about something, and you probably checked it on the web before, but they're telling you, no, it's got to be done this way, even though it's wrong. You guys just got to get with it. Okay, any others that anybody wants to add from here? Yeah.
What do you mean I'm not passing? I did my very best.
Oh, I did my very best. How can you not pass me? Yeah. You're right. I mean, if they put out everything that's possible, yeah, how can you not be passing? It's a real problem, isn't it? Because people don't fail, do they? No. Okay. Now the hard part. Solutions. I know this table has one. Oh, I have a hand up. You guys are off the hook. Sorry. Solutions.
We feel that we should be aware of the tools of technology and all the gadgets. But also, in terms of conflict with roles, I think we need to come to an understanding. And, when they're in this particular institution and when you're working with this particular establishment, these are the roles that we all have to respect. We have to come together and we have to deal with them.
So what I hear you saying is, what we need is a discussion about roles and responsibilities, and to point out that it's not just me, the heavy-handed person, that there's a reason for this, and so we need to do this. And you're also suggesting, I think, that people become a little more familiar. Let's go to computer documentation. Let's solve that problem, and that way I can do it from home.
Right, it's not that easy because it's a big cost involved.
Oh, cost, yeah, there's always cost. But yes.
We can't fix what's out of our control.
Okay.
So we have to live within.
Living within, okay. All right. Other solutions? Was that your solution? Okay, we can go with it.
Goal setting.
Goal setting?
Like the students' goals and expectations.
Okay.
And then what our goals and expectations.
Okay, so do the goal setting kind of thing beforehand. So when I, the student, walk in, I know what's expected of me. And so do you, as a matter of fact. So that could be a very, very good thing to do. Did you do that, by the way?
Yes.
How come there's conflict then? I mean, it's...
The goals don't match.
The goals don't match.
Expectations don't match.
And the expectations don't. So we need to do the goal setting, but then we need to have the discussion about why the goals need to be the same in that particular case. And that could be a hard one. But yeah, I completely agree. Yeah.
This is going a little bit back to these are the rules of this organization that we're working at, but also provincially there are colleges, our governing bodies that look at our profession have these rules and regulations. And I did this once to one student that worked brilliantly. They were passionate about some issue that was changing, and I said, they're looking for somebody on the committee. Here's their phone number.
So you put them on the
Yep,
committee?
and they jumped right in and helped out and were belonging to that committee for a long time.
You know, it's interesting that, keep in mind that I mentioned these are people who are very team-oriented and very community-oriented. They will join any team that you want them to join. And they're more than happy to give that kind of information. So maybe one thing that we can do if there's a goal-setting problem is let's form a committee to figure out what, I don't know. But you can kind of see that there might be some input things that can work. Anything else from the back, maybe? Do you want to mention? Other solutions? One more, yeah.
Buy an iPod.
Buy an iPod. Why would we do that, by the way?
Seems like a good idea, but
Oh, yeah.
I was looking at that video they're doing on the multitasking, like buy some fancy technology thing, so you want to collaborate, you want to meet in the middle, so they can sort of subscribe to your classroom or
Yeah.
your accepted guidelines each meet, But
Absolutely. And I even push that a step further and say, buy an iPhone, and you'll be able to do something like that soon. I actually bought one in the States a little while ago, it's better. So it's a fabulous thing, but you're right, get used to that technology, because you can get familiar, you can do stuff with that you might not have realized. Yeah.
I think one of the challenges is that we talk and set goals about the what we will do, we will assess, we will treat, we will do paperwork, etc. And that's not really the conflict. It's about how those things are done.
Okay.
We don't set goals around how we expect you to do it, and the discussion around what's getting done versus the thought that you'll show up on time versus that you show up and get the work done, but you didn't show up at that 8:30 start time. But you didn't do the work. So the what is done, but the how.
The how is an important thing.
It's an important discussion we don't have.
Process goals are every bit as important as outcome goals. And so you're absolutely correct. If you're going to talk about goals and expectations, you got to talk a lot about how those are to be accomplished. Because you see, I might be used to doing things in a totally different fashion. I might be, in the iPod example, I might be quite used to keeping all my schedules here, updating stuff here, dealing with things wirelessly, and you want me to do something else, and I don't understand why, because it's antiquated. But if you want me to do it, you need to help me understand why, and that's a really important kind of thing. Yeah.
But in the real world.
The real world.
Yes.
The real world.
Right. But in our work setting,
Yeah.
there may be 20 people that do the thing differently. The
Yeah.
outcomes are still the same.
Yeah.
All the same outcomes. And therefore, our student generation now have to realize that they have to be adaptable.
Okay.
And they have to be open-minded to the versatilities of the process.
Okay.
That it's just not all one way.
You see,
Nice.
The interesting thing is, her comment is, in the real world, there are barriers, there are walls, there are policies, there are procedures. The millennial generation would say, so change them. And we're stuck saying, no, you got to do it this way. And they're going to say, well, why? And I know where you're coming from. In the real world, there are barriers, and it's also the case that barriers are there to get around many times. So I know I can't change hospital protocol, and that's going to be a difficult thing. But maybe I need to understand why that protocol is there, and that would help. And you're right, there always are real-world constraints. I see a hand over here.
Well, there's always going to be real-world things that need to be changed, too.
Yes.
And recognizing that, because I know when I got into the profession, you come out with all these ideas and things that you can do, that you've learned that you could do, and then you get into a place where you're like, nope, and you're shut down.
That's right.
You're full of passion, you're full of ideas, and you could have done great things until somebody said, no, because of this. Not like, okay, you know what, we don't do it that way now. Can you explore, these are some of the constraints you have to work within. Can you make it work under these constraints? Or, what can you do with it?
Yeah.
Not shutting you down, explore it, see if it goes anywhere. Maybe we can't do the whole thing, we might be able to do half.
Yep.
Or maybe we can't do it at all, but don't shut them down with, these are the policies and these are the barriers.
So what you're saying is, let's be flexible. I mean, if it's the case that at the end of the day, I got to have that paper documentation in, let's sit down and figure out how we can do that. Maybe there's another way to do it. And you're right, people come in with the feeling that they can change the world. In almost every survey that I've seen, by the way, you ask a millennial student, how likely is it that you think you can change the world on a scale of 1 to 7? The average score across thousands and thousands of people, 6.8. And so and then we say, well, you can't do that. Yeah, they think they can. And that's the difference. And so if you got a bunch of people who think they can, maybe we need to roll with that a little bit.
Well, then in that case, then I would say, show me how you do it.
Absolutely.
And tell me what we need to do.
Yep.
And then we can move it forward.
So we need time for discussion about, if you want to change the world, please help me. I don't know how. Help me do it. And I think that kind of discussion could be absolutely beneficial.
Then
But you know what's interesting about that? You're right, we have cost constraints. And you say, look, I can't afford to hire so-and-so. I can't afford to hire you to do it. Ask them to volunteer. They will. I mean, it's really amazing when you look at it, because if this is important to do, we'll get it done. And many times it doesn't have to be within the budget line. But I know what you're saying, is that in the end, I can't hire any more people or spend money on stuff that I don't have budget lines for. But that's just another constraint that maybe we can get around. Okay, I have some suggestions for you as takeaways. These are sort of general dealing with conflict kinds of things, and will help you in a whole bunch of ways. First of all, ground yourself. And by that I don't mean, hold on to a rubber piece. But that's not, it's kind of that idea. Have a social support network. Okay, this applies to both sides of this. You're going to have conflict, there's no way around it. Find a way to diffuse it when it happens. Number 2, keep a positive outlook. Somebody mentioned this earlier, that it's so important to go into every situation with a positive outlook, and kind of what people have been saying here. We can do something rather than we can't do something. It changes everything enormously. Number 3, look for warning signs in yourself and others. You know when conflict's coming. Okay, you know when you're in there. The other person probably does too. But what we do is, we fend it off, we don't deal with it, and we let it roll, and then we're in trouble. Don't do that. Figure out what the warning signs are, and deal with it right away. Number 4, stay in control. What I mean by that is not to use the force method. I mean, stay in control of yourself. You don't need to jump to this or that or an extreme position. You know that it has to be done slowly and evenly. Make sure you do that. Number 5, establish ground rules. We've talked about that before. There are ground rules for things. There are various ways to get around it. You know what they are. Make sure you have that conversation. Number 6, think win-win. We can't do that. That's the outcome of that collaboration kind of thing. Yeah, it takes forever, but maybe we can figure out how to do that, and that's an important thing. Number 7, eliminate emotions as much as you can. Emotionality gets in the way of conflict resolution. Yes, everybody's angry, everybody's upset. We know that. But that is never going to help you solve the problem. The best way to deal with stress, as I'm sure you know, is not having an emotion focus, it's having a problem focus. And that works for conflict as well. Number 8, concentrate on what you can control. Surprisingly, you can't change everything, both sides of the equation. So I guess the best thing to do is you figure out what is negotiable, what is able to change, and you got to learn to live with the stuff that you can't deal with. Brainstorm solutions. I think there are always solutions available. They're always going to be out there. You can do it with the individual. You can do it by yourself. When there's a problem, you can say, look, we're obviously having some difficulty here. Let's go away and think about how to deal with it and come back and talk about it. That's probably going to be much more effective than just trying to deal with it right then. And number 10, don't forget to take action. Avoidance is the worst thing you can do. Do something about it and do it as fast as possible. I think that's the best thing. So, when we look at this conflict stuff, we know that it's inevitable. It's a part of life. It's never going to go away. You've got to deal with it. You've got to take it head on. You can't get rid of all of it. But you know what? You can make it fade. You can get rid of it that way. You can deal with it. You can actually take the conflict and fade it out so that we end up having with a very happy work situation once again. Thanks for listening. I appreciate your time.
Dynamic, insightful. Didn't I promise you dynamic and insightful? Yes, and Mike delivers. But more important, I think we can take many of these concepts away and not just use them in our clinical education environments, but in our personal lives. Indeed, anyone with teenagers or partners, I'm sure, can take any one of these concepts away this evening and use them. Try this in your home. So thank you again, Mike. It was a wonderful presentation, and thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and speak to our group.